one of these days, everyone's tongue will just fly over that acronym and get it right. But in the meantime, so today we're focused on working with the media, and Chris Hamerla and Chris AC are teamed up to do this presentation. I'm not quite sure where Chris Hamerla is. So we're checking on that. And Chris AC, though, is here, and he is going to kick it off.
Yeah. So really glad that Jeannie reached out to Chris and I. I'm just going to keep using we because Chris and I worked on this presentation together. So he definitely deserves a lot of the credit. So excited about talking about working with the media. One of the things that we always like to touch on is the resources that come from Jeannie really make this part of the job really, really easy. So the press releases that get sent out for Drain Campaign, for Landing Blitz, are really 90% ready to be sent out. So you can add in a personal flavor for your own work area, make sure you put your name in there, things like that. But because Jeannie puts those together for so many of the events that we have throughout the summer, makes it an easy first step. So especially for new coordinators, use those resources. Take that press release, change it a little bit, and then send it out. You don't need to start from scratch because Jeannie puts a lot of that work in for us. That includes resources for Snapshot Day, for Waterfowl Hunters AIS outreach. So just keep an eye on your inbox for those press releases and get those sent out. Kind of tied in with that is compile a list of press release submission emails. This is something Chris and I both agreed on, that this is the easiest way to do it. So I have an Excel spreadsheet that I've looked up. Okay, here's some local newspapers. Here are TV stations, radios, maybe even podcasts, and hobbyist newsletters, and just put all those emails in a spreadsheet. By having that all ready to go, as soon as you get a press release, you get that press release, take 5-10 minutes, alter it to make it a personal flair, and then you have that email list ready to go and get it sent out. So sending out the press release maybe takes 20 minutes in total between editing it and getting it sent out. One of the things that Chris and I both agreed on was we want to make sure that we're courteous of partner coverage areas. So working in different counties, the TV stations viewership doesn't end at a county line. So as you're sending out these press releases, send them to maybe some local folks, or if you're northeast part of Wisconsin, Green Bay has a lot of the TV stations, Appleton area, central Wisconsin, Wapaka, things like that. So send them these press releases, but make sure you're being courteous of those other coverage areas. Something Chris and I agreed on, we wanted to bring up, was if a TV station is getting 3 press releases for the same event from maybe 3 different coordinators, if there's a similar coverage area around a main city, Chris and I agreed that's perfect. We'd rather have that than have a TV station or a newspaper not get that press release. And then it'll be just up to the TV station of saying, okay, it looks like we can either be at, for instance, northeast Wisconsin, we could go to Lake Winnebago. It looks like maybe there's something over in Manitowoc or Sheboygan, or maybe in Shawano and Menominee. So it gives them options for what works with their schedule. And the main thing is getting that message out there. When Chris jumps on, he has a funny story from what happened with him and Bob Wakeman a couple of years ago, but I don't want to steal his thunder, so I'll save that for him and we'll touch back on it back at the end. The other thing that we wanted to say is add those press contacts. If you send out a newsletter, if you have social media pages, save those emails and put them onto your newsletter. So you'll send them the press release a couple times a year when those come out. But if you're adding these same contacts to a newsletter that you send out every month, then there's just an increased chance that they're going to see some of the work that you're doing and want to contact you for a story. We've started to see that in the Fox-Wolf Watershed Alliance area, where we had several media interviews on the bait shop initiative after sending out a press release. We had some on Landing Blitz and Drain Campaign. And then just a couple of weeks ago, we had in our newsletter that we had started the Purple Blue Strife Biocontrol Project down in Fond du Lac. And one of the news stations that we regularly work with contacted us and said, hey, we saw this in your newsletter. Can we do a story on it? So at some point you've built these relationships and they're going to be coming to you for these kind of stories, which is really cool. Chris Hamerla has seen the same thing from when he was telling me when we were planning this. In that bottom right photo is he's got a great relationship with a TV station in the Wapaka area. So they'll contact him and say, hey, can you come in and do a live morning session on stopping invasive species, maybe around waterfowl hunting outreach or drain campaign or things like that. So Chris and Cisco there always get some good airtime. Some of the tips that Chris and I wanted to pass on to folks is in these interviews. So you've sent out the press release, you've been contacted, you're going to do one of these interviews. Some things that we found that works really well is keeping the media hooked. A couple ways to do that is have props. A lot of the times you'll see in those photos, we'll have a boat behind us. So for like Chris Hamerla, he had that boat for waterfowl hunters outreach, and it just gives the interview kind of something to look at as they're doing that interview. In the bottom right-hand photo, that was for drain campaign a couple of years ago, where it was nice to have a boat there and show here's where you really should be looking for aquatic plants. Those props, other props that you could have are AIS specimens. A lot of the stations that I've worked with love when I have like zebra mussel shells, even something as simple as that in my hand gives us something to talk about. You could have an AIS sign if you're at the boat launch, relevant items, boat, things like that. If you're talking about drain campaign, have an ice pack to show them. It just helps to break up just an interview of 10, 15 minutes with an ice pack with some of these props. The other thing Chris and I really agreed on is this passion is contagious when you're working with the media. So even if you feel nervous about going into this, be confident, be excited. It makes for an engaging interview. So even if there's a slight mix-up or something like that, if you're being passionate and confident, they're going to want to keep coming back to you for more interviews. And that's just going to come across to whoever's watching it. I know for me, for instance, when I'm watching either local news or anything like that, if someone's really passionate about what they're talking about, then it's just contagious to me to say, yes, I want to do whatever they're doing, whether that's a volunteer event or in this case, cleaning off my boat. For another tip that we found that's really useful is giving kind of short sentences or a consistent message, kind of hitting both of those together. When I first started working with the media, I would find I would go into a lot of run-on sentences where I would say something and continue on to something else with another thought all mixed in there. And it really didn't give a good start and stop place for the media when they're doing these interviews, when they're trying to air them. So if you keep the sentences short, easier for sound bites, maybe plan out like, here's a couple things that I want to say, here's how I'm going to get the message across. There's a less chance of having a skewed message, which happened to both Chris and I a couple of times, where there's a little bit of confusion about the message itself. Something else Chris Hamerla mentioned that he's done in the past is providing props, not props, but providing B-roll, video for some of these interviews. He has just some invasive species photos, some video of him at a boat launch or looking for plants, things like that, that he offers up. This is great because it saves the media time. It gives the viewer exactly what you want them to see. So in the case of a photo or that B-roll video of showing somebody cleaning off their boat, the media uses that, and that is just the video that they want, that you want to be seen, to have that message get across. If Chris Hamerla jumps on here, if he's got that, he has a video that he was going to show of some of that B-roll footage to give an indication of what he likes to send to the media. So at the end, if he jumps on, we'll see that as well. For doing these interviews, Chris and I both agreed that to get in that mindset of here's some of the things that have worked for us after doing this for a couple of years, is really go in knowing that you're the expert. Maybe they've read the press release. Working with the media in my area, I've always been surprised when I walk up and they have the press release and they're trying to quickly go over it before we do the interview. So keep that in mind, that maybe they've read the press release. So as you're doing these interviews, have those key points of, if it's drain campaign, talk about the importance of draining water and the ice packs and how those tie together. Something else that we found beneficial is, as they're getting set up for this interview, don't be afraid to suggest video angles or placement if beneficial. So sometimes what I've found is they'll set me up where I'm facing the water, which can be great. But at the same time, if you're set up where there's boaters coming in out behind you doing the steps, it just adds another visual appeal for the people that are watching these presentations. Something that it's hard to get in the mindset, I have difficulty with it, is not sweating those kind of mistakes, small little slip ups. If you're doing a live interview, which I always prefer, I love doing the live interviews, you can take a second and say, pause, correct yourself in a professional manner. If you misspeak, maybe you say the wrong lake name, or your words get a little flubbed up, you can just take a second, take a breather, and then keep going. If you're doing a recorded session, you can always stop talking. If they asked you a question, you can say, oh, let's do a retake. I didn't like what I just said. And 9 times out of 10, they want to get you saying what you want to say rather than a mixed message. So make sure to keep that in your back pocket of you can ask for doing a retake. What's happened to Chris and I a couple times is they'll ask a question, and maybe it's a really in-depth question, or maybe we don't understand the question. So if you don't know the answer, you can say, oh, let's cut this, maybe phrase it in this way. Or if it's an unclear question, phrase it in this way, something like that. One of the things that we'll put in the chat is a couple of these examples that Chris and I like. So for example, there's a recent media interview that I did talking about the Purple Blue Strife project. And this was a live interview for a morning show. And during this interview, it was really nice because if it's live, you can direct the conversation. So that's why I like the live interviews, compared to they'll record a soundbite and maybe get the message that you want. So here is a link. I'll put that in the chat here at the end, is a good example of how I like working with the media. Chris Hamerla had a recorded video that when he pops on, he can share as well, showing just some good examples of here's what we like, where the media did a great job representing the event as well as who they're interviewing. And then we have a couple could have gone better examples, as we like to call them, where maybe the messaging got mixed up, maybe they grabbed the wrong soundbite since it was a recorded interview. Maybe they forgot to mention the organization, which happened to me a couple times. There's always been some confusion about, okay, does Chris work for the Fox Wolf Watershed Alliance? What's the Winnebago Waterways program? How do those fit together? So in some of these interviews, they took the press release and just said, okay, this is the Winnebago Waterways program is doing Clean Boats, Clean Waters, and they're the only ones in the state doing it. And we had to contact them and say, that's not right. The press release even says it's a statewide effort. So sometimes you'll have some good experiences working with the media, and sometimes they can get that little bit of mixed messaging or not fully understand when they're doing a story. And then some of these other tips that Chris and I both have found that have worked really well is, one, get the reporters' business cards and add their emails to your list of press releases. So when we first started, we had a list of here's how to submit a press release to this TV station. And sometimes they would get it, sometimes they wouldn't. It would be kind of tricky. Once we started working with some of these reporters and we got to know that reporter, and they said at the end of it, if you have anything else, contact me. We take their business card, we added their names to our compiled list of press releases to send them the press releases, or send them just an email saying, hey, we have a new cool project that you might want to do a story on. So it's building those relationships, but also giving you multiple avenues of working with the media in one way or the other. The other thing that we always want to make sure that Chris and I like to do is give the reporter your personal card. So they have your name, your organization, your phone number, and your email all right there. So a lot of them in that like lower right-hand photo, you can see they'll put your name and then your organization. And this is actually a screenshot from an interview that was on the list of things that could have gone better. Because you can see Alyssa here was one of my interns. She is Clean Boats, Clean Waters, but that's not technically who she worked for. So there was some confusion there. So having those business cards just makes it really easy for them to say, oh yeah, this is Chris AC, Foxhole Watershed Alliance. Chris and I have both had this happen to us, where you are set up with an interview to maybe do it mid-morning or mid-afternoon, and all of a sudden you get a call from that reporter saying something else came up. So every interview you do with the media, whether it's recorded or live, there's always the chance that you're going to get bumped. Breaking news, like the burning house, if there's a burning house that's happening downtown, Chris Hamerla threw in there, you know, Aaron Rodgers is having a midlife crisis, they're going to cover that compared to invasive species stuff. So just keep that in mind, be flexible in terms of they'll work you into another day. The other thing that can be slightly difficult or challenging is I've had it where the media calls me at maybe 10 or 11 o'clock a.m. for something. And they'll say, hey, we want to do an afternoon interview at 1 p.m. Or sometimes I'll say, hey, can you meet us in 30 minutes? We want to do a story on this. So it's a very quick turnaround for them as they're trying to get things planned and ready for maybe the evening news or for the next morning or something like that. So it takes that little bit of flexibility to be able to say, okay, look at my schedule. Is there anything I have to do? Can I bump anything to maybe tomorrow to really get this interview out there? Because that's just going to get a much wider viewership than if you include the press release in your local newsletter or sending it out or things like that. So being flexible with the media is always is part of working with them, really. Chris and I in the past have had a really great clean boat, clean water inspector, a couple of them for each of us. And so we always like to say, get them involved. Just adding new people to get in front of the media is always a great way. One, it builds experience for that clean boat, clean water inspector. They can then say, yep, I've been interviewed. I know what that process is like. They can even include that special skills on their resume if they'd like. But also they're the ones that you've trained on invasive species, and they're the ones talking to voters. So they might have some personal stories that they could also bring up during these interviews. So we suggest getting any clean boat, clean water inspector who's great involved. If you think, yep, they can work with the media and they'll represent clean boats, clean waters well, they'll represent the organization well, get them involved. Chris wanted to throw in this tip of provide the reporter with questions and answers. When you're talking about the interview, when you first meet them, wherever you're meeting them, at the TV studio or at the launch, you can say, here's some questions that are going to go over really well, that have worked well in the past, and just provide that to them as they're trying to read the press release, thinking, what questions can I ask? Throw up a couple toss-ups for them so they can say, oh, I can easily ask that, and then you're prepared as well with an answer. Of course, dress the part, whether it's, you know, clean boats, clean waters, if it's part of the summer campaign or bait shop initiative or things like that, they'll be much more willing to have you be shown if you're dressed the part, looking like someone who's an expert in the field or wearing something from your organization. Be mindful of people and activities in the background. This is kind of part of talking with him about maybe lining up a shot, trying to say, okay, well, we can have the boat launch behind us, like you can see with Alyssa here, but there's a chance somebody all of a sudden sees they're on TV and starts doing something crazy. So have those conversations and just be mindful of what's going on around you. And then creating that beneficial professional relationship. At the end of the interview, my goal is always to have whoever interviewed me say, that was great, send me more stories in the future, because then you're just building those relationships of they'll reach out to you, you'll reach out to them. And then Chris threw this in as well, smile during the interview where appropriate, especially if you're giving a soundbite on a recorded session. If you're smiling when you're talking, they're just going to want to include that even more. So he wanted to throw that tip in there as well. So this was from the CNC Media Factory, Chris AC and Chris Hamerla. So we definitely had to put this album cover in there. Throw out to all the folks who know this band from the 90s, but hoping you learned something today and can take any questions or comments. Same with reaching out to Chris by email or phone. Reach out to me, email by phone if you have questions.
I'm glad you put in the end there. Um, so I don't know if you saw it, if it popped up for you in message that Anna got a hold of Chris and something happened and he's not able to be here today. So
I just want to pop on and let you know he got a hold of me. He called me back and he was not very happy with himself. We had a change in plans with our schedule, and he says to let you all know that if it makes everybody feel better, he's out picking purple loose strife beetles because they're starting to lay eggs, and he's cold and wet.
I may be doing that tomorrow. I don't know. I'm hoping by afternoon it's warmer and the beetles will be happier to jump in a bag for me or a bottle. Hey, Chris, since we've got like 5 extra minutes, do you want to show it? Were those live links on that slide back there that you could share it? If remember, you have to optimize your screen for it.
Yeah. I'm going to stop sharing for a second and then pull those up and make sure my screen is set like you mentioned for optimizing.
Yeah, I can just imagine. Chris Hamerla is the last person you'd expect to ever goof up on a schedule or anything. So everyone be kind and forgive him. And of course, Chris AC knows how to step up when needed. So all good.
All right.
He has her hand up, but I can't tell who it is. It's not showing me the name. Doug. Hi, Doug. Are you able to unmute?
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for allowing me to cross the border here. Great job, Chris, on the media tips. So
Well,
I was
thank
looking
you.
for some media. I was looking for some media tips as well, even though I've been interviewed about 400 times and have received media training. If I may, I'd like to add a couple of additional tips to your list. And oftentimes the reporters will do this anyway, but they'll ask you to spell your name and also spell out your affiliation. That's especially important if you're with Sea Grant, which sometimes has been spelled C, with a capital C and then a dash and then another C and Grant. So just one tip there. Another one that you did touch on, Chris, so very well, but always think about the context and creating a sense of place with your background. And you kind of did that already, but I just wanted to reemphasize that. And limit your comments, if you can, to 3 main points. And this is a really important thing. I've been interviewed probably 400 times. I've only been misquoted twice. And I believe both of those, it was because they already had a hidden agenda. But if you tell them before and while they're setting up the camera, what your main point is going to be, and then you go on camera and then tell them what your main point is, and then to follow up with that main point after the interview is over, it's much more likely that they're going to be consistent in taking that soundbite and then using that soundbite. Just a couple of other things was let's see. Oh, reporters generally will meet, whether it's TV or if it's radio or if it's especially in the newspaper, they meet on Monday mornings, and generally they meet early around 7 o'clock, and that's why you're going to start getting calls around 10 o'clock, because they have mapped out for the day and potentially for the week what sort of coverage they're going to be planning, so they can assign the reporters. And getting back to the reporters right away is really, really critical if you're going to try to get your message out that way. So they're generally on a very quick turnaround time. They want to be back at their property to do their editing and to get their stuff into production by about 3:30 in the afternoon. So if you can be responsive to their requests, you're much more likely going to get a piece and help get the word out on aquatic invasive species. So thanks for the opportunity to chime in.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. Let's see. Yeah. See, I knew there was a reason to let somebody from Minnesota in. You ready to show that video?
Thanks, Jeannie.
Thank you.
Yeah, got it pulled up here. I'm throwing those links in the chat in case you run out of time as well. But
Okay. Oh, there we go.
okay. Hopefully this works and is smooth enough for us. This is one of those links that I sent in the chat. So if it's really breaking up or if the sound isn't right, then you can click it and watch it later on.
AC from Winnebago Waterways, how are you this morning?
I'm doing very well. Glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us. So tell us, it's been a while since we caught up, but tell us what type of projects have the invasive aquatic project been working on?
Absolutely, yeah. So at Fox-Wolf Watershed Alliance, doing a lot of different projects, including aquatic invasive species projects. We're getting ready for the summer season, hiring on some interns to be at boat launches to talk to people about invasive species. But we also have larger watershed projects. We have a big cleanup. Over 1,500 volunteers are joining us this coming Saturday to help pick up trash all throughout the Fox-Wolf Basin.
And that's so important because fishing season is upon us. So I know you guys have been working on some things. So tell us a little bit about the Purple Strife project.
Absolutely, yeah. So this Purple Loosestrife project, there's an invasive wetland plant called Purple Loosestrife. It has really pretty purple flowers, but it's really, really aggressive and pushes out a lot of our native species. So we're trying to get a control on this species in areas like this where there's just a few plants before it gets a real big, strong push into our wetlands.
Yes, so how are you guys going about handling that? Because I know it can get aggressive.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So we partner with the Wisconsin DNR and UW Extension, and they have this project where we're putting a biological control species of beetle out on these plants. So this beetle only eats Purple Loosestrife, and so we put it out in these wetlands. It controls some of these plants and just makes it so our native plants can outcompete these invasive species.
And how important is that for you guys to keep that up?
Really, really important. And a lot of places across the state, you can look out across some of our wetlands and it's just a field of this Purple Loosestrife that's really just taken over. So we're trying to make sure that that doesn't happen in some of these early places, like right here in Taycheedah.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us, Chris. Lots of great information there, doing what they can to keep our environment amazing, which they do live in Taycheedah. Faith Alford, Local 5 this morning.
Nice job on the Purple Strife project there, or the Purple Strife, she said.
And that's where you'll see, like, even some of the reporters, they'll flub something up. So then you can jump in and be like, here's what it is, or
Yeah,
here's the information.
You did that without correcting her. You just said it correctly, which was much nicer way to do it. So I thought that right away. So, oh, that was a really good way to handle it without correcting her, but pointing it out. So why was that in the dark?
So this was part of a live morning show. So this was, I think, at 4:45 in the morning. They're doing four live interviews. So the first one happened right at 5 a.m., right when that morning show started. So they drove down to Taycheedah from Green Bay, and the first one was in the dark. And on this link, the link is in the chat, you'll see 4 different videos. So you can see all 4 of the different things we talked about, just span of 30 minutes apart. So the first one was in the dark, but by the time we were finishing up, it had that morning light.
Yeah, I see those on my local stations. Did we have any other questions or comments or anything? I haven't seen anything else come up in the chat. And I would need to actually, before the chat disappears, I want to click on this one so that it doesn't go away on me, but I'll just do that after I close out here. So if there are no other questions, I want to thank Chris AC and then Chris Hamerla for helping put it together, even though he wasn't able to make it today. Great advice. Thank you, Doug, for chiming in and giving us some additional tips. I am going to get, I'll have all of these that are recorded. To get them onto Extension for YouTube, I have to have them captioned and all that first. So it's going to take me a little time to get them all ready after I'm done collecting beetles, which I don't have a lot left to do personally, but expect those maybe by the middle of June, depends. I got some time off coming towards the end of June, so it might be early July, but I'll try to get it done as quickly as possible. This one, I may actually make one of our first because the fact that so many people might actually need it for drain campaign. And when you mention that, Chris, for anybody who's on here, so as you all know, we're not sending out ice packs this year. Everybody's got to use what they had from last year. And if they don't have any, apologies. I have the new towels in for next year. And what I could do though, is if you want to have just one towel, these weren't bagged like the previous ones. So if you just want one of the new drain campaign towels, just shoot me an email and I will get one ordered, sent out to you. So you have it for something like interviews. So if you don't have an ice pack to hold up, you can hold up the new towel that we'll be giving out next year. So, and nothing else popped in chat. So you did so well. You answered all the questions.
Can I ask
Perfect.
one question?
Oh, I was wrong.
Well, it's not really a question, but it's just if people click on the links you put in the chat, Chris, I know the could have gone better one looks like it's was it a Wausau station? Do you know why that one could have gone better? That if we watch it outside of the chat here today, we can kind of keep our eyes peeled for what could have gone better?
That was one of the links Chris Hamerla sent me
Okay.
to include for that slide. So I think what we'll do is I'll talk to Chris and see, maybe we'll send a follow-up email out to maybe like the listserv of here are some points that Chris wanted to include, as well as his views on like the good example and the could have gone better example. He even had a good example on his personal computer. So maybe he'll include that some way or another and provide those insights to what he would have liked to see better from that interview.
That's a good
Thanks, Chris.
idea. That was a good question, Anna. Thank you. It was a question. And you know what? I'll try to get started on that transcription and so that we can get this one done rather quickly. And then we'd be able to send the YouTube link out along with that note to everybody. So I'll see what I can get done on that. I might even be able to start it after I get through the 100 emails or so that I can look at.
I can say for that other could have gone better link, that was one of the stories that was recently done for Fox Wolf, recently being within the past year or 2 years. That was the example I kept going back to of they didn't ever mention Fox Wolf, even though it was in the press release, which was kind of strange. They got the message for Clean Boats, Clean Waters pretty accurate, but there was still just kind of some skewed things. I think once you watch it, you'll kind of do what I did, was like, well, that's not entirely true, or that's not quite right. Or even some of the interviews that they do with boaters at the boat launch. So we've seen they'll interview the Clean Boat, Clean Water inspector, and then they'll go talk to a boater, and the boater might say something that's like, I wonder why they included that soundbite. So just a little bit of cringe, but not terrible, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
It's rarely the end of the world.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Chris and everyone who joined us this morning. And we're quite a bit over now, but that's okay, because I think we had good stuff and you all stuck around, so it must have been okay with you too. So everybody have a great day. I'm going to turn off the record button if I can find it here.